Hot breath.
Oh, good.
Of course, yeah.
And I forgot. All the hang-ups.
Of course.
What's up?
We're just doing this podcast.
Yeah, sorry, did I interrupt?
No. Well, yeah, I mean, you did interrupt.
What's up, Neil?
It's Neil Ready, everyone.
Neil Ready.
He's popped in. But are you going to stay at Teensy or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
A live pod?
it is your favorite thing to do. Okay. Neil's going to come back.
Neil Ready.
Yeah.
An Atlanta favorite.
Neil Ready, everyone. Anyway,
Oh, and that water's for you. That's
wow.
a gift. That's our hot breath water.
breath water.
It's our sponsor.
How could I
Fontes.
even drink it? I would like to save it. The coolest water for the hottest podcast. I love it. So yeah, anyway, what's the question?
We were going into storytelling and the
Yeah.
struggle, and something when researching you, I heard you say is that you'll improvise but have like safety nets along the way.
along the way. Absolutely.
So how do you kind of incorporate those into the writing process?
You know, I guess there are some comics out there that like have jokes that like maybe are 50%, and so their saves actually end up becoming the funny part. You know, I mean, I'm not even like specifically thinking of someone, but there's comics like that, which can also be its own thing, which is fun. But the safety nets, I would say, is almost like totems within the set. Like, especially right now, it's been almost 2 years, I guess, since I recorded my half hour and it came out. And so got my new hour like pretty close. And so I have basically a framework, you know, just like, or I guess whatever, the fence posts that I know I need to hit. And I'm still figuring out, and I'd like to add tags and make it better and callbacks. And so I basically now have chosen an order that is sort of like my fence posts along the way.
Okay.
And then I can play within them, you know? So if something doesn't go well, it's like, well, I know I have a good joke coming up, but I at least tried something.
It almost gives you the confidence to explore on stage because you know you have something to save it if it's silent for too long. Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess just in general, I like to have a lot of laugh lines. I mean, I know that seems pretty obvious, but ideally you have, I don't like to go that long without having a laugh line.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's pretty speaks for itself. Like most comedians want to get laughs.
But sometimes comedians will call it, they'll like style. Like it's not really funny, but it's like cool or whatever. And you're like, well, it should still be funny.
I mean, for a long time I was also just dark and not exactly funny yet, you know. And sometimes still, if people don't get me or they didn't get my style, there'll be times where it happens less rare, but like even tonight there was a woman in the front row who you could tell was probably meant to be there. But I think it was during one joke where she was like, oh, which, you know, of course, like to me is cringe. Like that's the last thing I want to hear. That's not the reason I'm telling you this.
Right.
You know, ideally the joke is to make you laugh about something that was not great, you know? So when they take it the wrong way or too sensitive for you, it's like, no, that's not what I wanted, you know? And so I think for the longest time, it really was more dark and not funny enough. And so I've tried to master that as the years go on, being able to make it funny enough, but also dark.
Do you almost find, though, how you're saying the dark thing can affect the reaction of it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I almost get annoyed with, like, if I'm not enthusiastic and I say a joke that usually works, then it won't work.
Yes.
So it's almost like how you're saying it is almost as important as what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Do you find that?
Yeah, no, I think so too. I sometimes will play with it, especially if I've been dealing with this weird thing lately where sometimes like I'm having trouble catching my breath on stage, which actually has never really happened to me, and sometimes I begin to wonder, I'm like, is it allergy? Am I getting older and I'm having allergies or something in the certain places that I'm traveling to? I can't totally figure it out, but like I am fine with being slow, but I think as the years go on, my pacing has gotten quicker, I guess. I mean, I've changed as a comic since I've started.
Right.
I think maybe more to myself, I feel very different than maybe to an onlooker, but even if you watch like my first Conan set from whatever it is 6 years ago, I obviously think I'm very different from then.
Oh yeah.
But it's one of those things where you just don't realize, like, obviously as a human you're going to change, and then it goes with your comedy as well. So I feel like the way I'm saying things now is maybe more closer to my personality as opposed to how I started, which was more deadpan. And so sometimes when I go deadpan because I'm tired, or if I can't.
Trifling.
Well, you also get some background chatter of the
great.
laughing skull.
It's a laughing skull green room.
Yeah, that's where we are. It was because of me that we're in here.
I appreciate your time. Oh my gosh, you're Beth Stelling.
That's very sweet.
You're a killer.
Well, thank you. Thanks for
Like,
coming to the
and
show.
that's what the main thing I was so curious about diving into was the writing side, because you have the stand-up experience, but then also, I mean, the TV writing and writing for so many series. That's a world that I don't have much experience with, but the people I've talked to, they almost make it seem like, I mean, it's cool you're a writer, but they're like, but you work. You're like there. You're like all day.
Yeah, and it definitely will affect your stand-up, of course. Because
That's what I've heard,
if you're there all day, it's tough to want to get up at night, and really your sort of brain is fried by the end of the day. You sort of have what I've talked about with other comics, just like decision fatigue. You know, as you sit in the room, you're deciding whether to talk, whether to not talk, you know, what joke to pitch, whether it's good enough. You're doing a lot of like mental work. I mean, it seems so silly because essentially so many people want to write for TV, and it is a coveted job. So then to get there and be like, I'm tired, or complain, it feels crazy. You know, so you don't want to be like, man, my writing job is tough, because it really is a coveted position, and it is an honor to be able to work and, you know, do all those things. And of course, you know, you work hard for them. But the point is, it is exhausting, you know, sitting at a computer is so tough on your eyes. And so it's just like, it seems like such a stupid thing to complain about, but you kind of have to take care of yourself, relax, rest your eyes, get good sleep, because it's your main job. And thankfully stand-up is always kind of there, and I can go back to it. But I usually start, like when I was writing on Crashing in New York, we would move there and continue the writing process from LA for about a month, and then we would shoot for 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And so I would be there, and I would do a lot of sets initially. And then as time wears on, our shoot days are 12 hours. And so sometimes if we were shooting over by the Cellar or Village Underground, it's like I could pop over and sneak away, but you also don't want to get caught. Like, can I get alts for this? And I'm like, where's Beth? You know what I mean? It's like, she's on stage. So the benefit was being close. You can just hop on a train in New York, but also you kind of would have to ask permission to leave. And because the show's about stand-up, the beauty of that was oftentimes they're very lenient. You know, they could say, yeah, you'll do it, because you might get a story out of it, or perspective, or something to add to the show.
And what are alts?
Like alternative jokes to what was written in the script.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So basically, or like similarly to if you're doing Punch Up, you know, on a movie or something, it'll be like, it's written, but can we beat it, you know, on the spot? Or if they improvise something, can you add to it?
And you'll have,
or if the scene's not working, then on the spot you would go away and rewrite it.
Oh, and just kind of spitball it right there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And then on top of it, anytime, typically with Judd, there's a lot of improv that's going on.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very collaborative in that sense, it seems.
Yeah, so it might just be like, sometimes he's even just kind of yelling things out for the actor. I mean, not in an aggressive way. It's in a microphone, you know, or
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of like just tossing things out of there.
And you went from year 1 on Crashing, staff writer, to then year 2, you're like executive story editor?
Yeah, the way that writing works typically is like your deal is sort of worked out when you're brought on, you know, so in your deal, your agents have worked out if you bring her back for season 2, she'll, you know, receive a higher credit. And if I went further on, I would have increased each time. You know, that's kind of like the setup of the whole gig. Essentially, your agents are supposed to sort of look out for you in that way. But yeah, I did not go back for season 3. I took some other writing opportunities, and well, you know, I kind of wanted to go in different directions.
Yeah.
And so it gave me experience in writing for like Hilarity for Charity, Seth Rogen's Netflix special, and a pilot for David Spade for Comedy Central, and then Punch Up on that movie this summer in Vancouver that'll be out this July. It's called Good Boys. So I really got to bounce around and try several different things as opposed to just TV writing, which I am grateful. I learned a lot, you know, from Crashing and from Judd and being on that show.
Yeah. What did you learn?
Like basically when I first got the job, of course it was life changing. I remember where I was just like outside this bike shop. I had just done this meeting at you take a lot of meetings in LA typically, especially when you're first going. You're just sort of trying to get your face out there and meet people who you might click with and work with in the future or whatever. But Electric something, I think it's Jack Black's company. And I came downstairs and it was like near this bike shop, and I got the call, and my managers were just like, hey, Judd Apatow just called and asked if you wanted to write for Crashing. And I was like, yes. You know, I do. And I just remember like, this is incredible. You know, like my life will change because of this, because it's very difficult to get a writing job. And, you know, I had done a couple, Judd at that time, he had seen me out a lot because he was starting to get back into stand-up. And so as we saw, his special came out last Christmas time. That's what he was working towards. But like, that's why his reinvestment in stand-up and Pete's show and all of that inspired him to start doing stand-up again. I'm sure among other things, but from my viewpoint and talking with him. So he was out on the scene getting back into it. And he saw me, and I had been on the Pete Holmes show, and I knew Pete. And so when it came to hiring writers, they thought of me, and I went in to write for it.
So what does a typical day look like on the writing job?
You get in, you have coffee.
What time?
Usually around 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reasonable hour.
Yeah, sometimes we would start early. And then you already start thinking about lunch. It's a lot of ordering food. It's a lot of ordering food and coffee. But yeah, I mean, the ideal early processes are what the early stages, I should say, are like what they would call like blue sky. So you're just sort of pitching things out in a sort of brainstormy way, sharing stories and stuff where the show could go, you know, from your own life, and, you know, just commiserating, but also sharing group experience. And a lot of us have been to the same comedy clubs, and so we know the owners. We share our different stories about that owner, you know, and all the things that could happen. And there's a writer's assistant in the room who usually that person wants to be a writer, and they work extremely hard and they're paid the least. And, you know, they do a lot of work because they're organizing everybody's thoughts and taking them down in real time.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. The writer's assistant is a very, very tough job. I think they're somewhat hard to get. And like I said, they work so hard and they're paid the least. And so they're there taking everything down, and then those notes will go out, and you can, you know, review them over overnight if you want, and the next day come in. And as weeks go on in the early stages, you're sort of trying to map out the season, you know, episodes, how many episodes your show is, but for us 1 through 8, and sort of the arc of the season and the characters and all of those things, they start to take form as the weeks go on, and we sort of lock things in. And Judd would pop. He's not there every single day, but he'd sort of pop in. Sorry, it's so loud.
No, you're cool.
Okay.
These mics will pick up mainly
Oh,
us
good,
anyway.
good. Okay.
Yeah. This is common. This is the grind right here.
I know everybody's out in the other room yelling. But Judd would sort of come in and basically sort of shape or hone in on the ideas, or basically share his expertise. Like, here's where I think this should go.
Wow.
And sometimes we'd be going off on a tangent for a long time, and if he didn't pop in for a while, he could come in and be like, no, he would never be like, no, you know, he's not like that. He would just be like, what if it goes in this direction? Or I think the series, like for season 1, I remember he's like, what if it ends with Leaf and Pete in a bed together? And then so we would have to sort of find our way to that, even if that's not where we were going at all. So
Interesting.
So yeah, he's the executive producer, so he has pretty much the final say.
It's almost like one of those tent poles, though.
Yeah.
Like you said, like with your stand-up. It's
yeah, like
almost
here's where we need to get.
The destination.
Yeah, he had a vision for how he wanted the season to end, and how we were going to get there was the task.
And how many hours a day is this?
Usually, it depends on your showrunner, like their style, and you know, sometimes if they feel like, well, you're exhausted, we've exhausted our minds today, you can go home. It depends, but you know, there are shows I know for a fact you hear these stories about, like, the New Girl room was really long. They would be there sometimes overnight, you know, or stay till 11 or midnight. And with Crashing, it was typically like 9 or 10 to 6-ish, you know, something like that. So like decent hours, sometimes earlier, sometimes later.
I've heard Pete say in interviews, with Crashing specifically and writing it, that he felt like if what they were talking about didn't make him uncomfortable or didn't feel too personal to share, then it almost wasn't worth keeping. Do you find the same with your material or things that you write as well, or did you find that in the show? Or
yeah, I mean, I think it's like your desire obviously is to connect with people. I mean, my desire is to connect with people first and foremost, but in my own very unique way. And so, I mean, I'm not calling myself very unique, but I'm saying ideally I'm connecting with them in a unique way. You know, I don't want it to be, I like the specificity of things, you know? And so my favorite things early on in stand-up were when I would see a comic talking about something very, very specific, and me knowing exactly what they were talking about, it just made me laugh so hard. And that was my favorite thing about it, is like, how could they, and those are the moments where you're like, man, I wish I thought of that. Those times where you see jokes that you're basically jealous of, because you're like, that's so good. Why didn't I? So really all you're trying to do is just get that unique perspective on topics that really a lot of people can relate to, you know? And then again, not everyone is going to like you. And I think that's probably a good thing, in my opinion. It hurts a little because a lot of us are, you know, either starved for attention or we're in this for a reason because we need that like sort of love from the outside. So it can hurt a little if not everybody likes what you do. But I think in general, it's probably, I would prefer having a specific group of people than everyone.
Do you think that's helped you to find your voice as well? Like you said,
yeah,
being
I mean,
more comfortable.
Right. I don't like, I guess maybe I would be fooling myself to say that I don't love creating some tension, you know? I think I do. I think too, for a long time, it was one of those things where it's like, you don't want to stir things up or whatever, or have like a super strong opinion because you want to be liked. And that was obviously a theme for me as a kid, as like a little performer and attention seeker. Like I wanted to be liked. And obviously I still have that in me as a stand-up, you know, I enjoy getting laughs. But now I think I have more of a desire to say what's on my mind, or make a sort of statement or a point, or share my perspective on it, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe open up somebody else's mind to it.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to be like, you know, I'm not a super political comic. I'm not, or at least I don't see myself that way. But I would like to open up somebody's eyes to a different perspective.
It seems like the power with walking that line is like in the writing and how you kind of navigate those waters. Mm-hmm. So when you're developing stand-up, what is that process? I've heard you say sometimes it's papers on a table, sometimes it's like note cards or sticky notes on the wall.
Yeah, I usually
what does
do
that look like
a one, you know, I used to, when I first started to write out jokes, you know, word for word.
Verbatim, okay.
Yeah, type them in to my computer. I don't do that anymore, mostly because it's just, they sort of seem to disappear on my computer. In my notes, I have a ton of ideas, and I'll have to go through them sometimes, and then they're everywhere. They're paper, they're in my notes on my phone, and sometimes I have to go through and like I'll summarize them into a group in my notebook and be like, these are all new ideas you should go through. I mean, I've tried to adapt this mantra in my head where if I have a day off or whatever, or many days off where I don't really have a show or a headlining weekend or something, I'm like, there's always work to be done.
Yeah.
And I sometimes am just like, I don't have anything to do, but there's so much work that can be done on stand-up for you to be really good. And it's easier to just get by with a joke that works than to make it perfect. And then again, of course, you can do that too much. You know, you don't want to be a perfectionist and never, you know, finish a joke or make it too perfect. You know, there's obviously middle ground and balance on anything. But now I sort of do one word, or sometimes I'll take a voice memo. Yeah. But it's usually like an idea in my head, and I just have to try it on stage. And at this point, I've grown comfortable enough on stage that I find it a luxury to just be able to, you know, try jokes within a headlining set. Which, of course, hasn't always been the case. Mm-hmm. You sometimes have to show up and just really deliver because you're not as known, or you don't know if you'll be invited back, you know, as an early headliner. So you can't just like try shit out and throw it against the wall. But I do that now, which I have fun with, you know, like I said, I can just like play between things. But it's usually a one word on a note card for a joke and an order that I have going on my wall. It's hard to be, what's it called? Subjective of your own things, you know? Is that the word? I always get objective and subjective confused. Subject is specific, object.
Yeah, subjective is taking out the context.
Yeah, so it's hard to be objective about your act.
So you're like saying you see
Can
your
I phone
act,
a friend?
and it's hard to.
I don't know if I was I really hunching over here in this video the whole time?
Oh, I don't know. This is definitely green room cell phone video right here.
And also, I'm sure the lighting is a little spooky.
The downlight is just giving us nice shadows.
I know the lighting is. This is probably better. But anyway,
you get tight. You get in your own head about your material.
Well, it's hard to just say like, yeah. I mean, that's why it's helpful when you have someone you trust to watch and say like, whatever. Say you had a joke on hoodies or something, and you talk everything about, I'm just saying it because we're both wearing them,
yeah,
you know, and you talk about the color and you talk about the zipper and you talk about everything. I'm like, dude, what about the strings? And you go, whoa. And obviously that's so simple, but you just needed somebody else on the outside to be like, you're not even talking about the strings. And they're like, holy shit, I wasn't even thinking of that. So it's like sometimes it takes somebody else's creative mind to see a different angle on it that you just for whatever reason cannot see.
Yes.
And I was a lone wolf for a really long time, so I think I have the TV writing stuff to thank for making me be more collaborative. But yeah, I mean, stand-up there's this pride in the fact that you do it alone, and I write all my own jokes, and they're all true stories from my life, and so I think that's probably apparent. Although some people have been like, "Is that real?" You know, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's strange, but it's real. That's my life, my childhood." So, but now I'm more open to at least someone saying, well, what if you like I ask, you never want to really like go up to a comic and be like, here's my notes. You know, you want to go with somebody you trust and like specifically ask them, but they can help you sort of see something you might not see, you know? So, like I've just been toying. I mean, I'm in the South right now, but I've been toying with moving some things around in my set that are more progressive. But the truth is, if I film or tape my next special and keep it at the top where I would like it to be, where I'll do it, it will be ideally a grouping of my fans, and they'll be more on the progressive side, and so it will be received well.
Of course.
So there's a lot of factors that go into stand-up, where you are, whether or not the people that have come out to see you are already fans, or if they just came to see a comedy show. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of factors. Something
that's tough for comedians is to know like when to just let go of the joke. Because it's like, how many times will you try a joke before you're like, okay, I tried it in this hipster bar, I tried it in this restaurant, I tried it in this comedy club, and like it worked here but not here. Like, how do you know when it's like, all right, it's dead?
I know, it's tough. It's weird. Sometimes I hold on to it for a really long time, even if it doesn't work, because it works enough times and I like it.
Right.
It's hard. It was something I learned, I think, from a college professor, where it was like, it's called killing your babies, where you just have to, you can't keep everything so precious. You just have to say, I'm going to have to let this one go.
Yeah, there's more.
It's interesting that was the expression that he used. But anyway.
Yeah, I've heard that before too.
You have?
Yeah, I've heard that expression.
I love how like that's okay, but everybody's real pissed about abortion.
Oh, you're still in the Planned Parenthood joke mindset.
But anyway, yeah,
it's just cool. You're able to hide great writing with a casual delivery. We have 4 minutes.
Yeah, I love you. Okay, all right, wait for me to eat that. Hold on.
Wait for me. Sweet Beth wants the dessert.
This one's yours too. This is from Dana. Oh, really? Sorry, I just ran and it's okay. I love you. We'll eat them later. There's tiramisu that's arrived.
Dun, 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 dun. I know, but you lost a tooth for. I saw your Modern Comedian.
Oh yeah, and I'm missing a tooth now. One of my sugar teeth is missing. I'm getting an implant on Monday. A tooth implant.
So you're gonna have it for the special and all that.
I won't. I think it takes like 6 months.
Oh, really?
I don't really have a date right now that I've set for recording it anyway. So but going back to that, it's almost like that's another thing. It's like when you record it, then that's your end time. I mean, obviously you can still tell jokes that you like from that. I think the idea of killing everything you've ever written, is not great, but when you're ready to record it an hour, you're typically building to weed out all old things. Whereas in between specials, you can have fun mixing from old if you want, because people come out to see you that like your old stuff. And if you want, I like to mix things in. But I can't really do that right now because I need to get in the practice of doing all the new stuff.
Yeah.
That being said, I still gravitate towards certain subjects or, what am I trying to say, sort of hover around certain topics that always kind of talk about, so there's similar joke areas, but different new jokes.
Yeah. And you're better at writing and inserting your point of view.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe your first Conan set, like you said.
Right. Yeah.
Which is a great set.
Well, thanks. Yeah. I think I don't want to be the person that looks back and like hates all my old stuff, but it is tough to love it because you have changed and you like to think that you're better. And I think that comedy people love to go so hard on things, like with their opinion, whether it's good or it's not good. And I get the nature of that. I do. But it's just, it is fun. And I'm thankful to have those older things online into what I have now, just because it's like, yeah, people change.
Of course.
Well, it's interesting that our country in a lot of ways is so obsessed with change or not change. I mean, I'm not political, but this just comes to mind. As a comic, I'm a political person and care about politics and I vote. Mm-hmm. And but the point is, like, remember when I don't know how old you are, but it was like John Kerry essentially lost an election based off of the idea that he was a flip-flopper. Okay? Like, it was like he flip-flops on things. And it's like, I hope so. Like Hillary, Hillary used to also not totally support, I think, gay rights, and since she's changed, it's like it's very odd. As a country, we don't love change. I get if someone is like lying to your face and doing something else, but yeah, I think change. That's just sorry, I just went off on a tangent.
No,
but it's like we're oddly obsessed with. You have to stick to your guns, and it's like we should all be trying to constantly change and grow, and so. I don't know where I went off on that.
But even thinking of in the big swings of like a comedy career and like the highs and lows, like you record your first album the night before your notebooks get stolen, and then you record an album, and then you get booked for Conan like that week as well. So do you find in your career that it's almost like the lower the lows, there's always a high to kind of bring you out of it?
I guess that has happened.
That has
career? Absolutely. And there's also, I mean, I remember feeling about like maybe I wanted to stop. And then I got the Chicago Reader's like best comic of Chicago thing. Truly, like my friend was like, look, go pick up a Chicago Reader.
Crazy.
And I was like, what? And, and then, like you said, like the notebooks getting stolen and then me being forced to sort of trust myself and my memory. And of course I look back at that album and I don't love it. And I think like, why did I put that out? There was no reason for it. You know what I mean? Like you have these things in your head where like, I have to put out an album. And it's sort
milestones.
Of like, yeah. But then again, going back to what I said earlier, it's like you also don't want to never put one out. Mm-hmm. So there is a balance to everything. It's just and it's out there, and I know some people have enjoyed it, but it's tough for me to listen to.
Well, thanks for doing this. We have hit the 30-minute mark, and before we get out of here, a lot of comedians listen to this. Is there anything else you want the world to know, or like any closing advice you may have for comedians out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I always like to say is just sort of like there's. Like for comics you love, it wasn't always easy. You sort of have to build your audience and it's like drops in a bucket. And sometimes you do things and it's more of like a splash. But it takes time typically. Of course, there's always going to be someone who like maybe moves to LA and gets on a show that ends up being huge and then they get to tour. Like there's always exceptions to the rule. Right. But ideally it is sort of a long, slower process. And not everybody was laughing at their jokes at first. It's like you have to, it takes time. And as long as you're staying true to yourself and doing what you think is funny, you're probably going to have fun and enjoy yourself.
Boom. Yeah. All right. Beth Stelling, thanks for being on Hot Breath.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me.